Durandal takes place in the year 2411, 32 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis. It follows the continuity of Star Trek Online, which largely adheres to the canon of the shows, aside from the final season of Star Trek Picard. The 25th century thus far has proven to be a time of both tremendous wonder and terrible conflict. In 2405, mounting tensions between the Federation and the Klingon Empire erupted into all-out war. One of the primary sources of contention was the infiltration of the Undine, also known as Species 8472, into various governments across the Alpha and Beta quadrants. While the Klingons relentlessly pursued the Undine wherever they could be found, and even used the infiltration as a pretext to conquering races like the Gorn, the Federation downplayed the threat. At the beginning of 2409, as the war continued to drag on and cost hundreds of thousands of lives, Captain Allerka of the USS Hector was recalled to Earth Space Dock. He was given a new assignment: take command of the USS Durandal, NX-9350D, and undertake a classified mission. He gathered his senior officers, a mix of old friends and new faces, and they set course for Talos 4, hoping to recruit the Talosians from the original series episode The Cage, and their mastery of illusion to finding Undine infiltrators. Although the Talosians only agreed to further negotiation, the mission was considered a success, and the Durandal was forced to respond to a distress call from the Vega colony, beginning the main story of Star Trek Online. From there, the Durandal embarked on numerous other missions, battling Klingons, Romulans, Cardassians, the Borg, and others. Eventually, it was discovered the Undine had been manipulated into their infiltrations by the Iconians, an ancient race seeking to return to the Milky Way in conquest after 200,000 years of isolation. In fact, the Iconians had been manipulating events as far back as the Hobus supernova in 2387 that nearly wiped out the Romulan Star Empire. In light of this greater threat, the Federation and Klingons finally signed a new peace agreement in early 2410, and the war between them was ended. Together with the newly formed Romulan Republic, they began to work together, finding a way to the Delta Quadrant through the Iconian Gateway network. There, the Durandal engaged in a variety of further missions, helping end the menace of a resurgent Vaadwaur threat, as seen in the Voyager episode Dragon's Teeth. Soon after, however, the Iconian invasion of the galaxy had begun. The war proved to be one of the most devastating ever fought by any race of the Milky Way. Although ships like the Durandal were able to score minor victories against the Iconians, they were at best delaying actions. The sheer power of the Iconians and their heralds was such that entire fleets and whole planets were being wiped out in the fighting. Fortunately, however, at the Battle of Midnight, as the Iconians were on the verge of destroying Earth, an act of supreme generosity convinced the Iconians to stand down. During the battle, the Durandal took heavy damage. Evacuating the ship, Captain Allerka ordered the Durandal set on a collision course for the Iconian dreadnought. The destruction of the ship brought down the dreadnought's shields, and the crew was able to complete their mission. In the aftermath of the war, the crew of the Durandal was given some time to recover. When they returned to duty, they found a new ship waiting for them, the Durandal-E. This new ship was an Eclipse-class intel cruiser, retrofitted with a variety of Iconian technologies. Their service upon the new ship would prove to be both the shortest and longest time any of them had served on a vessel. Shortly after launching, the Durandal was thrust into the Temporal Cold War, mentioned in Enterprise, as it began to heat up into outright conflict. Traveling across numerous centuries and interacting with figures both historical and futuristic, the Durandal eventually found itself participating in the final battle of the war. Just as victory seemed achieved, the Durandal was struck by a blast of stray temporal energy. Although it survived, the crew found themselves hurled back in time over 10,000 years. While all options were explored, it was determined they lacked the resources or technology to directly travel back to their time. The only way to get back without potentially altering the timeline was to take the long way. And so, after placing the ship in deep space where it was unlikely to be discovered, the crew went into suspended animation to sleep the millennia away, only awakening once every century or so to perform maintenance. Thanks to the Iconian technology aboard, the ship was able to keep functioning all that time. When the crew awoke for the last time, it was only a couple weeks after their original departure. Even so, the long years of inactivity had taken its toll on the Durandal, and it was decommissioned out of necessity. The crew was once again allowed time off to acclimate after their long journey. Wasting no time, however, Captain Allerka began to draw up plans for the next iteration. Tapping into the proto-matter expertise of the Federation's new Lucari allies, the Durandal F, a Gagarin-class battlecruiser, was outfitted with proto-matter-infused systems, granting it nearly unprecedented levels of power output and weapon strength. The newest Durandal was ready just in time to participate in operations against the Tzenkethi Crusade to destroy hundreds of worlds across the Alpha Quadrant seemingly at random. Ultimately, it turned out that Tzenkethi were attempting to preemptively prevent the return of the Herk, an ancient insectoid race that had once invaded the Klingon homeworld centuries ago, and mentioned in the Deep Space Nine episode, The Sword of Kahless. The Durandal was immediately thrown into numerous desperate battles against a foe with seemingly infinite numbers. Luckily, its capacity for refracting salvos proved extremely effective against the swarming Herk, especially in the Siege of Empersa, where the Herk sought to destroy the homeworld of the Dominion's founders. Thanks to the efforts of everyone working together, a cure for the madness of the Herk was found during the siege, ending their threat peaceably, although vast amounts of damage had been done. The Dominion was nearly wiped out by the conflict. However, it was allowed to join the recently formed Khitomer alliance, which already included the Federation, Klingon Empire, Romulan Republic, and a variety of lesser powers. The year 2411 dawned with yet another catastrophe. Ju'ula, sister to T'Kuvma the Unforgettable, who caused the Federation Klingon War seen in the first season of Discovery, had been thrown into the 25th century through a misfire of a weapon designed to tap into the mycelial network. She immediately began to engage in plots that saw the restoration of House Mokai, as well as taking command of a hardliner faction that saw peace with other powers as a betrayal of what it means to be Klingon. Her actions ultimately plunged the Empire into a civil war that saw the Durandal, which had been part of a task force designated to bring Ju'ula in, once again fighting just to survive amidst the chaos. Eventually, Jimpok, the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire, seemed to go insane and declared himself Emperor, unleashing the mycelial weapon indiscriminately. Ultimately, he was defeated in the Battle of Kronos, which the Durandal participated in, and stability was restored to the Empire. Desiring a return to normalcy for his crew, as well as a chance to engage in exploration, Allerka conferred with the Admiralty after the Civil War. Ultimately, the Durandal was reassigned to the very edge of Federation space, in the Gamma-Beta sector. Eagerly setting course, the Durandal arrived soon after. Following a day's work of orientation at Gamma 3, they set out for their first assignment at Epsilon Eridu.